part of my younger education in a parochial school, St. Patrick's School in Tama, Iowa. I attended the 4th and the 5th grade Catholic school, and I'd go up in the morning. I'd go down to the corner from 502 Southeast Street, down 2 blocks to the corner. We call it the Weaver corner because that's where the Weavers live. And at 7:30 in the morning, the bus would appear on the horizon on Broadway, come down across Church on Maple, pick us up and take us down to parochial school for class. And we got there, we prayed. We prayed at noon. We prayed before we left. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we prayed. And I figured out at that point, even though I was quite young, that the power of prayer has certain limitations, and one of them is that it won't cause parochial school buses to break down. On Friday, we went to Mass. On Friday afternoon, we went to confession. On Sunday morning, my father, who was unmerciful, had us back in church at exactly 10 minutes after 10 for Sunday Mass. So on Friday afternoon, when you go into confession, you say the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Bless me, Father. It has been 1 week since my last confession. I'm 9 years old. My sins are. And I always wanted to say it, and I never did. I always wanted to say, you never gave me a chance. Give me a couple of weeks off here, and we'll have something to talk about. We stayed there for 2 years, and then I went back to public school, but I went through the process, and I was confirmed. The church utterly rejected my suggestion that I could have my name Thomas. You're supposed to have the name of a saint for confirmation name. I wanted Thomas after the doubting apostle. They utterly rejected that. When they were done, they told me that I had become a warrior for Christ. And I didn't know how to tell them that I wasn't going to be available because I was going to be playing left field for the Brooklyn Dodgers. You laugh, but the Dodgers still don't have a left fielder. Hell, they don't have a third baseman or a catcher either, so it doesn't really matter. But in all of the upbringing I had in the church, I never heard, I learned about God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, Jesus Christ, the Holy Trinity, but I never heard the new God that we're supposed to worship today. The one that will solve all of our problems, the one that will remove every impediment to our chance to live in the land of milk and honey, the free enterprise system. And we're told as Democrats now that the problem is that we haven't turned the free enterprise system loose, that if we'll just elect a Republican to Congress or to the presidency, everything will be fine. They'll create jobs, there'll be peace, there'll be prosperity, there'll be everything. You know, and I thought about that, and I kind of wondered myself, why do the Republicans have an elephant as a party symbol? They ought to have a golden calf. But here is where we're at actually. The free enterprise system isn't free. The Great Recession is over for some, but not for everyone. The free enterprise system in its purest form, we're solving our problems right now, we would not be in the difficulties we're in. Corporate profits to the multinational corporations are at record levels. The 30 multinational corporations now sit on $1.9 trillion. CEO pay last year went up 28%. Workers' pay went up 1% before inflation. Productivity has increased. Not because of new technology, but because we're making people work longer and we're paying them less. And yet we're hit with this bombardment of ideas of what we have to do is we have to give the job creators more tax breaks, more tax incentives, more incremental financing, more rebates. And if we just do that, then they'll go out and they'll create jobs. And what they're really doing is as these corporations make money, their answer is we have to take care of our stockholders. And so the CEOs give their stockholders a lot of pay, or a lot of dividends. And some of those stockholders just happen to be their family and friends. And because they've made money for a lot of their family and friends, therefore they have to have a bonus. And so there isn't any money left over to give to workers because after all, we have to take care of our stockholders. So we can't pay the people. You know, it's almost as if we reread Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist and decided it was a novel of praise of the British financial system of the 19th century, their poorhouses and their financial laws. Sometimes I think we want to recreate the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the Carnegies. Clarence Darrow said at one point, he said, you know, if a man's going to risk his life and his limb to go underground, $500 a week doesn't seem like too much to make another man rich. And yet as Democrats we've been muted, we failed to say, and we need to say, that if there's going to be incentives for business, and I question whether they're needed or not, then there has to be a concept of reciprocity. There has to be some balance. There has to be assurance that profits are shared with the people who create the product and make the money for the company. And if we lose our voice on that, if we allow the Republicans to sell this new God to the American people, our society is going to be set into two classes of people, just as it was in England in the 19th century. You know, what our party really recommends and represents is this. I like to say that we're April. You know, winter comes on here in November. It kind of sits on us in December, and it's still kind of neat because the ground is white. But by January, it is cold. 10 degrees above is a heat wave. February lasts forever, although it's the shortest month of the year. The sun never shines. The skies are always gray. The light is always gray. And then March comes. In March, when you start seeing puddles instead of ice on the sidewalks. March, when you get that last winter snow, which you know it's going to have to retreat, the inevitable retreat of winter. If March is hope, April is promise. April is the first month that you can take your big old heavy coat and put it in the closet and wear your jacket to work. It's where you can go outside at noon. It's when you again realize just how green this state can be. It's a time when you go to work it's light, and when you get home it's still light. April is promise of the spring and the summer to come. And our party still has to represent that promise. Our party still has to be April. You know, I hear so much in the conversation today about the need for compromise. Let me suggest that there are some things that aren't compromise, and that's our principles. I still believe in a universal public education for every student in this country. I still believe that the air we breathe ought to be clean and the water we drink ought to be pure. I still believe that organized labor should have a right to organize, and I still believe there should be a right to strike. I think it's a myth in this state that we're a right to work state. We're a right to fire without cause state. I think we still should see that people pay their fair share. I think we should still maintain some respect and treat our government employees with respect. I don't think those are promises. I think those are principles. And I think those are things this party should stand for. Now, you know, I was back in that Catholic church in October of 1994. I sat again in those pews, those dark, hard wooden pews that are just as hard and just as dark as they were when I was 9 years old. I knelt on the kneelers, and I got up and I walked out and stepped onto the marble tiled floor with my brother Kathy, with my sister Kathy, and Larry, and Michelle. And I followed the casket of my father down and out the door to his final resting place. And I thought to myself as I followed him, I said, you know, I wonder if the merit of a man's life is what his net worth was on the day of closing. Is that how we evaluate things? Do we say, how much did you make? How much profit did you make? How many people did you make work for you? Or is there a different measure of man? We don't talk about the Democratic Party and talk about our promise and talk about our pledges. The essence of the Democratic Party is we live in the spirit of charity. You can have the Republicans read that Bible part about the greatest love is to love your neighbor as you love yourself, to share, to be compassionate. And by that standard, my father was a success. In 1936, President Roosevelt went to Philadelphia to accept the nomination of his party for a second term. It was held in an outdoor baseball stadium, and it rained that day and that night. And as the president approached the podium from behind, he wore leg braces. He slipped, fell. The man lost his patience. He snapped at his aides, "Clean me up." And they did, and as only Roosevelt could do when he stepped to the podium, the rain stopped. The president looked at him. He says, "You know, governments can err. Presidents do make mistakes. But the immortal Dante tells us that the sins of the warm-blooded and the sins of the cold-hearted are weighed upon different scales. And better the occasional errors of commission of a government living in a spirit of charity than the continual sins of neglect of a government locked into the ice of its own indifference." We are not indifferent. We are Democrats. We live at the bottom line, that we have a responsibility to each other, that our working places should be fair, that our workers should be treated with respect, that the senior citizen and the pensioner didn't cause this recession. The calloused hands of our farmers didn't push those computer programs to sell those mortgage-backed securities. Our nurses writing in hospital charts did not underwrite those false documents and say they were AAA. Our people have done their part. Our people will continue to do their part, and they will if we keep our voice. But if we attempt to govern as Republicans, we'll lose that race. So I say, what's the principle of the Democratic Party? The principle is the spirit of charity. The principle of the Democratic Party is April. And that, my good friends, just happens to be the month of my birth. I wish you well.